Today on Dirt Road CRED, we're going to give you 5 preventative maintenance tips for the first-time Jeep owner. Number 1 is probably the most oversaid preventative maintenance tip for a first-time Jeep owner, but it is checking the fluids in your Jeep Wrangler. Now, as we pop open the hood here, there are definitely a lot of things going on. And if this is your first time owning a Jeep, you might want to read the owner's manual and see where everything is, because each engine is a little bit different. The biggest and most important are definitely your engine oil, your coolant levels. You can check your transmission fluid levels, your power steering. One that's not as important, your windshield wiper fluid level, as well as your brake fluid. The biggest key and tips that I can give to you while you're doing this is let your Jeep cool down and sit for a while. And even if you're buying a brand new or a used Jeep, you don't know that it has the correct levels of quarts in there, of your oil, of any of your other fluids, so it's definitely imperative for you to check that out. Transfer case is a little bit trickier to check. I would probably look at some more videos online to do that, but your differential fluid you're definitely want to check as well. Depending on how old your Jeep is, that fluid could be very old in there and be a little bit low. The last thing you want to happen is a ring and pinion failure based upon either low fluid or very old differential fluid. Number 2, when it comes to preventative maintenance, is checking the nuts and bolts on your Jeep Wrangler. Now, I'll give you a little precursor. Jeeps are not notorious for having bolts and nuts loosen up. There's lock washers, there's nylon washers, nylon nuts on here. There's a lot of things holding your suspension in place, so don't think that it's just gonna fall apart. But with anything, if it gets used over the years, modified, lifted, changed up, say you forget to tighten a bolt, things do happen. That's why I would like to do this at least once every few months, or if you go on a big wheeling trip, check your nuts and bolts. Now, I say about that, and I'm talking about every nut and bolt that you can find underneath your Jeep. We bring this up because quite recently Ryan came to me and said, hey, I think something's going on with my Jeep. I keep hearing a clanking, sounds like something's moving up front. The first time that you hear that, pull over and check it out, because you never know what is loose. Now, it turns out in Ryan's situation, it was just the upper sway bar end link bolt, so something that can loosen up over time. It was properly tightened down, but it does get a lot of tension on that specific part. There are a lot of nuts and bolts underneath your Jeep that you're gonna wanna check out. And the biggest ones are the ones that are connected to anything steering, anything driveline, and anything frame or suspension mounted. It doesn't take too long to go underneath and check them. Open up a torque spec manual. They're all over JL Wrangler forums, and just give a nice once over on everything. The biggest thing that I would say is, say it was connected to your tie rod or drag link over here, specifically your tie rod. Say the nut was loose on the top of your tie rod stud there, and that would fall off. Your wheels are no longer connected in the front. So both your left and right wheels can just go out like this or angle right in. That is kind of, I would say, pretty life and death. So you want to make sure that those are all checked off. Control arms, your sway bar end link bolts, shock bolts, track bars, tie rods, drag links, anything underneath here where you can see a bolt head or a nut, torque it down to the proper spec. It doesn't just apply to lifted Jeeps. If you buy an older JK, YJ, TJ, JL like this, there's a lot of nuts and bolts under there, and you don't know who was messing with them previously. And another thing too, you can actually pull off your wheels and tires, and we'll get into that in preventative maintenance number 3, and check some more bolts underneath there. Your caliper bolts, your actual hub bolts, those are very important on the back side of there, and you don't know who was messing with your Jeep before if you didn't buy a brand new one. Number 3 on the preventative maintenance list is something that's always touching the ground, well, at least hopefully, as long as you keep the shiny side up, the wheels and tires of your Jeep. This is something you can always check on and should do quite frequently. You can check a lot of different things with your tires. The first is setting the proper PSI. I shouldn't have to say that, but I've let mine dip a lot of times, and the ride quality definitely suffers, whether you've got the air pressure up too high or too low. Now, don't always go off of what says on the door. You're gonna need to do this by using what's called the chalk test. Take a piece of your kid's chalk or a chalk piece that you can find or buy at the store, draw a nice line on your tire, and drive on a perfectly flat driveway or road. When you go off of that piece of chalk, when you make one full rotation, you will see what parts of the chalk stayed and what went away. You can easily check this and make sure that your tires aren't overinflated, meaning that just the center would go away the chalk, or they're underinflated, which just means the outside would be removed and the inside would still stay there. It's a great and easy way for you to check the PSI and make sure that you're getting the most life out of your tires amongst rotating them and doing the proper 5-tire rotation. The other thing with your tires, you want to check to make sure you have no sidewall cuts. Obviously no screws, no nuts and bolts inside the tire too. I actually got a flat, probably like, I don't know, it was like the first week of owning my 2022 Extreme Recon. I just noticed the PSI start to lower really slowly when I got into the Jeep, and that is not fun because you can have a blowout either on the road or on the highway. Moving on to the wheels, a very crucial part of this is to make sure that everything is torqued down on your wheel. Obviously you want to look for any structural damage throughout the wheel, make sure they're not rusted out, make sure the aluminum's not cracking, and the wheel's not bent, because I've seen used Jeeps that have had all sorts of things going on. If you do have a set of bead locks, Ryan does not, but he does have the same ring, you're going to want to retorque those at a very, very frequent rotation. I probably do mine every 1,000 or 2,000 miles, and especially before a long road trip. strip, I do the star pattern and do all of my bead lock bolts. The most crucial part with the wheels, torquing down your lug nuts. This is a quintessential crucial thing of preventative maintenance. You can avoid a lot of damage and mistakes by just taking 2 minutes and torquing these down or having a shop do it for you. Every Jeep is different. However, the torque specs are listed in your owner's manual or online most of the time. I would prefer you go on the owner's manual because it's going to tell you exactly what the torque spec is. Second thing you have to be mindful of is if you've got aftermarket lug nuts like Ryan does, you'll need a key and the torque spec might change a little bit. So go with the manufacturer of the lug nuts and then you'll have to check them out and figure it out what it is for your vehicle. But the key should indicate what lug nut it is and also what torque spec can be used. Number 4 for preventative maintenance is something that we're going to give you some tips so that way you have to hopefully never experience what it is, and that's called death wobble. I know a lot of Jeep guys and people that are new to Jeeps frequently ask, what is death wobble? What causes it? How do I avoid it? Can I buy a Jeep that doesn't have it? Well, in fact, it doesn't happen too often. It really relies on the preventative maintenance. So death wobble is something in your front steering, suspension, or your front wheels and tires that create an imbalance of proportion of forces and create your tires to go left and right uncontrollably. It can shake your steering wheel extremely violently and be very scary to correct and even cause crashes. So maybe let's start off to say you do have death wobble or you want to prevent it. So the first and cheapest, check the tire PSI and also make sure that your front wheels and tires are properly balanced. I've seen death wobble caused just by an imbalance of tire pressure, 38 PSI on one side, 25 on the other. That can cause different forces and cause your vehicle to overcorrect with some death wobble. Second thing, take your Jeep in for an alignment. Many times I've seen that where your caster or camber is way out on the front end of your Jeep, specifically more the camber, so it's going to be toe in or toe out on the front. Normally it is toe out a little bit, and I've seen where those can be so off that it is causing the front wheels just to fight each other and make them shake then uncontrollably. When it comes down to the suspension, there's a lot of things that you can check. Track bars, make sure the bolts are tight, both at the frame and the axle mount. Make sure if it's an adjustable one, the jam nut is tight. You can check your ball joints by picking up your wheel and tire a little bit and giving them a little bit of a shake like this and make sure that those are still tight in there. Check all of your joints from your drag link to your tie rod. If all of those and you still don't have a reason for it, you might really need some serious help. And Ryan, maybe we'll do a video. We ought to go to Joe down at Locked and Loaded because he always cures death wobble there. That'd be a cool, interesting video. Let us know in the comments if you guys want to see a full video on like where exactly to check and what to check for a JK and a JL, because we'd love to put that together. Number 5 and the last one for preventative maintenance is the big elephant in the room, and that is rust and corrosion. So rust, we see it all over on the Wrangler. It depends on where you live. It depends on if you leave your top off, top on, salty roads. We'll give you a little example. Ryan's soft top is probably less than a year old, and the bracketry here is already corroding and rusting underneath here. Now, this is going to be a warranty issue. We're going to go to our local dealership about it, but preventative maintenance would be to take care of this right away. Whether this Jeep is out of warranty or still in, if it is, try and go get it solved by warranty. If it's not, get this sanded up and get it painted up. The biggest one for this is the frame and the underbody. I've seen Jeeps just completely wrecked under the underside with rust, and in fact, a lot of the times, people will try and hide it. Not a lot of times. Sometimes I've seen Bondo on the frame, plates welded on, all sorts of sketchy stuff that really just makes me nervous buying a used Jeep. So you've got to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Now, there are some rust checkers and ways that you can look through the frame. The biggest spots on some of the vehicles, let's talk about them. So the JLs, I'm not sure where they're going to rust out yet. We haven't really seen on the frame rails, but on the JKs, they rusted a lot under the underbelly. Skid plates on the gas tank side would rust. Not really too many control arm mounts. The spring perches would mount on the rear would rust a little bit. TJs were notorious for rust because they had a lot more time to go with it. There are a lot of places that make rust repair panels, but on the TJ, some spots to look for would be on your rear control arms, the underside where your transfer case and transmission mounts go, on the front, on your front coil buckets, and then all the other Jeeps, you just got to keep looking around. To stop that rust from occurring, what I like to do is every spring I take my Jeep out, tape everything off, degrease it underneath, get the frame rails really cleaned up. Anything underneath that I want to paint, I mask everything off and give it a nice coat of VHT frame paint. I found that works really good for me. I've liked it on my JK, on my TJs, and I'll probably start doing it on my JLs as well, but it's just a good way to prevent the rust. Another thing too, on the body, you can start to see corrosion. So if you get the rust or the corrosion on the tub, it is good to get that alleviated or fixed right away as soon as you can, because the longer you let it sit there, the worse it's going to get. On today's viewer rig of the video, we're checking out both John's two-door Wrangler as well as his M715 military Jeep. So this is a two-door Willys in the Sting Gray that he swapped out a lot of the really cool parts on it. We can see a front stubby bumper, full 20-inch light bar, a nice what looks to be a set of 35s on there, and the fender chop or rugged ridge fenders on there. Now onto the M715, what a cool looking rig on there. Those are absolutely awesome, and I saw a couple down in Daytona. I'd love to have something classic like that. This one looks like it has an Atlas transfer case in it. Definitely a nice little LS up underneath the hood to power all that, and a really, really cool looking Jeep. Beautiful frame underneath it too. I love those classic military Jeeps. John, thank you for submitting both of your rigs. I really appreciate it. And if you guys want to have a chance at your rig being featured, be sure to hit us up through Instagram or send us an email. At the end of the day, preventative maintenance starts with you, the driver of the Jeep and the owner of this vehicle. A lot of preventative maintenance and things that would break can be prevented just by you driving the Jeep properly. Now, when I say that, there are a lot of things you can avoid by not mashing the gas at every light, not slamming on the brakes, whipping the full steering wheel lock to lock, and hearing your power steering box whine every time. There's a lot that you can do as a driver to go easy on your vehicle when you want to, and then when you're in your off-road situations, give it a little bit more, but don't go over the top and start breaking things. If you guys are looking to pick up a new or used Jeep, definitely click at Dan Cummins. We have our dealership affiliate program. You can get a great deal on all of their vehicles, and you just click through and you get a nice vehicle, maybe just like this one that we got right behind us. But my name's Matt, and Ryan's behind the camera, and we want you to get out there and earn yours.